In our journey through life, there are moments when we feel overwhelmed, isolated, or lost. It's in these moments that we may question our purpose or feel like we're navigating the challenges alone. But I want to remind you of a profound truth today. You are never alone. No matter how difficult your circumstances may seem, God is always with you, guiding, protecting, and providing for you in ways that you may not even realize. His presence is a constant, a miracle that empowers and sustains us even in our darkest hours. Today, let's explore the incredible power of God's presence in our lives and how trusting in this divine miracle can transform our experience of life's trials and triumphs. Understanding God's omnipresence. To fully grasp the miracle of God's presence, we must first understand His omnipresence. The Bible tells us in Psalm 139:7-10, "Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me fast." These verses beautifully illustrate that there is no place where God's presence cannot reach. Whether we are in the highest of highs or the lowest of lows, God is there. His presence is not limited by time, space, or circumstance. He is with us in our joys and in our sorrows, in our successes and our failures. This truth should bring us immense comfort because it means that no matter what we face, we are never truly alone. The power of God's presence in our lives. God's presence is not just a comforting thought, it is a powerful force that works in our lives. When we trust in God's presence, we open ourselves up to His guidance, wisdom, and strength. Isaiah 41:10 says, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." This verse reassures us that God's presence brings strength and support, especially in times of weakness. When we are weary, God renews our strength. When we are confused, He provides clarity. When we are discouraged, He offers hope. The power of God's presence is transformative, turning our weaknesses into strengths and our fears into faith. Experiencing God's presence in daily life. But how do we experience God's presence in our daily lives? The first step is to acknowledge His presence. Sometimes we are so caught up in our routines and challenges that we forget to recognize that God is with us. Taking time to pray, meditate, and reflect on God's promises helps us to become more aware of His presence. Psalm 46:10 reminds us to be still and know that I am God. In the stillness, we can feel God's presence more profoundly. We can also experience God's presence through the beauty of His creation, the kindness of others, and the inner peace that comes from knowing we are loved by Him. By cultivating an awareness of God's presence, we can begin to see His hand at work in every aspect of our lives. Trusting in God's presence during difficult times. It's often during our most challenging moments that we struggle to trust in God's presence. When life is hard and the future is uncertain, it's easy to feel abandoned. But it's in these times that God is closest to us. In Isaiah 43:2, God promises, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned, the flames will not set you ablaze." This verse reminds us that God doesn't just watch over us from a distance. He walks with us through our trials. He is there in the midst of the storm, ensuring that we are not overwhelmed. Trusting in God's presence means believing that He is in control, even when we cannot see a way out. It means having faith that God will bring us through our difficulties stronger and more resilient. The miracle of God's power. Along with His presence, God's power is a miracle that works in our lives. Ephesians 3:20 tells us that God is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. God's power is limitless and beyond our comprehension. When we trust in God's power, we open ourselves up to possibilities that we never thought possible. This power is not just for grand miracles, it's also for the everyday miracles, healing, provision, protection, and guidance. God's power is at work in every situation we face, no matter how big or small. By trusting in God's power, we allow Him to work in and through us, bringing about His perfect will in our lives. Letting go and letting God. One of the biggest challenges we face is letting go of control and trusting God fully. We often want to take matters into our own hands, thinking that we know what's best. But Proverbs 3:5-6 advises us to trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight. Trusting in God's presence and power means surrendering our own plans and desires to Him. It means believing that God's plan is better than our own, even when we don't understand it. When we let go and let God, we allow Him to lead us on a path that is filled with His blessings and purpose. God's presence in community. God often reveals His presence and power through the people around us. He places us in communities where we can support and encourage one another. Matthew 18:20 says, "For where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there am I with them." In community, we experience God's love and care through the actions of others. When we feel alone, it's important to reach out to our community of faith for support. God uses our connections with others to remind us that we are not alone and that we are part of a larger body of believers who are walking this journey together. By being open to the support of others, we allow God to work through them to bless and strengthen us. The assurance of God's eternal presence. Finally, it's important to remember that God's presence is not just for this life, but for eternity. Jesus promised in Matthew 28:20, "And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age." This assurance means that no matter what happens in this life, we can have confidence that God will be with us forever. His presence is not temporary but eternal. This promise gives us hope, especially when we face the challenges of life and the reality of death. We can trust that God will never leave us or forsake us, and that His presence will be with us both now and forever. In a world filled with noise and distractions, it's easy to overlook the quiet moments where God is most present. Silence can be uncomfortable, but it is in the stillness that we often hear God's voice most clearly. When we quiet our minds and hearts, we create space for God to speak to us, to guide us, and to reveal His plans. This sacred silence is not about the absence of sound, but about the presence of God. In these moments, we can reflect on His goodness, meditate on His word, and feel His love enveloping us. Embracing God's presence in silence allows us to connect with Him on a deeper level, strengthening our relationship with Him and reinforcing the truth that we are never alone. Another vital aspect of trusting in God's presence and power is trusting His timing. We live in a fast-paced world where instant gratification is the norm, but God's timing operates on a different schedule. Ecclesiastes 3:11 reminds us that He has made everything beautiful in its time. This means that there is a divine order to the events in our lives, even when they don't happen according to our preferred timeline. Trusting God's timing requires patience and faith, especially when we're waiting for answers, breakthroughs, or the fulfillment of His promises. During these waiting periods, it's crucial to remember that God's delays are not denials. He is working behind the scenes, preparing us for what is to come. By trusting His timing, we align ourselves with His perfect plan, knowing that everything will unfold as it should in His time. Finally, God's presence is intricately connected to our purpose. Each of us was created with a unique purpose, a divine calling that reflects God's plan for our lives. Ephesians 2:10 tells us, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." When we walk in our purpose, we experience God's presence in a profound way. He equips us with the skills, resources, and opportunities needed to fulfill our calling. As we pursue our purpose, we find that God's presence goes before us, opening doors and paving the way for us to make a meaningful impact. Trusting in God's presence and power helps us to live out our purpose with confidence, knowing that He is with us every step of the way, guiding us toward the destiny He has prepared for us. You are never alone because God is always with you, guiding, protecting, and providing for you. His presence is a constant source of comfort, strength, and hope. By trusting in this divine miracle, you can navigate the challenges of life with confidence and peace. Remember to acknowledge God's presence, trust in His power, and let go of control, allowing Him to work in and through you. And always know that you are part of a community of believers who are on this journey with you. Embrace the miracle of God's presence and power and let it transform your life. You are never alone.